Hey, Tanse Kiao. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our event, Rocking Those Mocs. My name is Manon Tremblay. I'm the Director of Indigenous Directions at Concordia University, and it is my pleasure to introduce this panel, Rocking Those Mocs, Pride, Strength, and Unity. So before we start, though, I would like to offer a territorial acknowledgement. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University and myself, beaming in from home, am located on unceded Indigenous lands. These are the lands of the Ganyangihaga Nation, who are recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. And I'm very cognizant of that as Neheo myself from the Treaty 6 area, that I am very aware every day of my life that I work and I play and I live on this territory. So in starting, what I would like to do also is to present to you or introduce to you your moderator, Dr. Bimadushka Pukan. Now, Dr. Pukan is an Anishinaabekwe from Saugeen First Nation, number 29, which is located on the eastern shores of beautiful Lake Huron. Saugeen boasts the most awesome sunsets this side of the Ottawa River. And Vimanushka is very proud of her people, her family, and some pretty amazing corn she grew this summer, I hear.
Oh, yeah.
So here Vimanushka recounts some stories of her people long past, but that continue to live on as long as we tell our sacred stories. Vimanushka, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Miigwech, thank you, Mena. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our awesome discussion today, Rocking Our Mocs. I'm really excited to be a part of this, to speak to you today and to, as well, facilitate a discussion around identity and empowerment. I'd just like to remind the audience and our participants today that we are recording this session and that I invite our audience to ask questions in the Q&A feature that you see here on the screen. And I'd like to start out by introducing our panel. First, I'd like to introduce Brooke Rice. She is Snipe Clan of the Ganyangahaga Nation. Oh, that's terrible. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Awful. I'm going to get better at that. She's born and raised in Ganawagi. She is currently enrolled in the Master of Arts Individualized program at Concordia, where she is planning to create a sustainable youth mentorship in her community based on traditional kinship, language, and land. Her previous studies of the Radiwena Hirat. I swear I was practicing earlier, but now I'm nervous.
Thank you.
That's awesome. It's a language immersion program. It's fostered her passion for cultural revitalization and language reclamation. She feels lucky to work at CRE to help guide and empower youth to create impactful community engagements across Turtle Island. And Brooke loves hanging out with family, eating yummy foods. I can verify that. And foraging, beading, learning, planting, and hunting. So we welcome Brooke today. I'm just going to keep going on down and introduce the rest of the panels, and we'll come back to some discussion. Next up, I'd like to welcome Michif Cultural Connections, Josh Morin. He's a youth leader with Regina 4 of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Born and raised in the Edmonton area, Josh has worked hard to provide Indigenous-led workshops such as moccasin making or finger weaving, and running the day-to-day operations at Michif Cultural Connections, the Métis Cultural Center in St. Albert and Lac St. Anne, dating back to the community's earliest iterations, and very proud of their strong Métis culture and history they carry in Treaty 6 and in the Métis homeland. So we welcome to Josh. As well, I'd like to introduce Hannah Tutu. She's an emerging Inuit artist. She's going to tell us about where she comes from in a little bit. And she's an advocate and has talked about issues that the Inuit of Nunavut deal with, such as the need for more education, services, and support in Inuit communities. Having been affected by the suicide epidemic in her region, Hannah bicycled across Canada in the summer of 2019 to raise awareness about the suicide epidemic in Inuit communities. In Hannah's message, do not cut your life short. Hannah now spends her time working on her art and raising her children. And so welcome to Hannah. And so I'd like to just start out our discussion today by asking our panelists, Brooke, if you could start us off. Can you tell us about your moccasins and how they empower you?
Sure. So these are my mocs, my first that I made. Super proud of them. There's definitely got some usage at ceremony and jamming out. I really chose like different colors, just however it flowed out of my body. And I find it's really empowering when people see me in public wearing my moccasins, and I see them staring, and if I see another Ungwahue, they're just like, give me a head nod, and it's almost like this confirmation, like Segu or some sort of greeting. And when people ask like where I got them, I'm proudly able to say that I made these, and I had an amazing teacher. Her name's Merritt Cross. She is also from the same community in Kahnawake. And it just like connects me to the ancestors. Like they've been doing this practice for, thousands of years. And of course we evolve and adapt and got bougie and added all kind of bling and beads and sparkles, which is cool. Hopefully I'd like to get into some of the quill work and moose tufting. I went hunting this past month and we got a bull, me and my partner, and I tried to save some hair. So I'm going to try to get into moose tufting, and I'll have to put my blingy mocs aside. But yeah, I really, really enjoy wearing these, and it just connects me to land, and it reminds me of our creation story when Sky Woman fell and she had a bundle of seeds in her hand, and when she started to shuffle across the earth, the turtle's back, and it expanded Turtle Island, and in that motion she just shuffled in a counterclockwise direction, and it just reminds me of that, like to walk lightly on Mother Earth, and then the spirit that the animal has. This one's deer hide. You can use moose hide, different kind of hides depending where you are. Yeah, that's my answer for now. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Thanks. And what about you, Hannah? Oh, sorry, Josh, I jumped over you. Hannah, I said, oh, your baby's so cute. Can you tell us about your fancy footwork, or your fancy footwear, I should say?
Thank you for letting me speak here today. I've always had a very close connection to Kamitwinnak. So my grandmother, Joanna, I grew up in her house, like with my family, and always saw her sewing Kamitwinnak. And only when I got my oldest daughter, Aria, is when I started making sealskin boots. And so these are one of the first pairs I made for her. And it's a really nice way for me to reconnect with my grandmother, who has since passed. And it makes me feel really proud to be able to give that knowledge down to my children, and being able to keep them warm and give them that same feeling of, oh, like this is made just for me, like this is love in Kamitwinnak form. And yeah, whenever I wear my kamiks, I feel very proud of my culture, and I always remember, it reminds me of all the people that came before me, and how I'm now the one that's carrying that knowledge and passing it down. As well as my favorite feeling is like when you're crunching on like fresh snow with your kamituinak. Oh, that sound, that feeling. It's my favorite. And this is my son. This is Ikuma. He just woke up from his nap, so he'll be joining us on this Zoom.
Morning, baby.
Honey. That is so cute. Oh, I see. We're going to stop in really quick and welcome James Jones. Hi, James. My name's Bima Dashka. James is a traditional hoop dance artist who has performed and traveled across Europe, China, Australia, North America, and is ranked among the top 5 hoop dancers in the world. Some of James's performances include the 2006 World Ski Cup Championship in Italy, 2010 Vancouver Olympics, 2014 Juno Awards, 2015 Pan Am Games, the 2015 Coachella Music Festival. Love to hear more about that. And the 2015 Sydney Opera House. And he's worked with such artists as Chaos and Snoop Dogg. It's my favorite. Yeah, so we want to welcome James. And so James, you think you can dance?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I could. I think I could bust it out. Tanse James Jones, Nisakasawan, Nahia Nia, Talkri First Nation, Ochania, Kisamanatao, Ia Nenaskama Ihi. Hello, everybody. Thanks for welcoming me and thanks for having me here today. I'm really honored and happy to be here to just come and share a little bit, speak a bit. Sorry, I'm running a little bit on. I like to update the word Indigenous time, but yeah, just really happy to be here to join and some awesome panelists as well. So thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Joshua, I would like to just ask you, can you tell me about, the style of moccasins that you wear and, how they empower you or connect you to your roots?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually worried thinking the Métis guy gets a different question all of a sudden or something. But no, Tanshe Kiawao, Josh Morn de Shinakashun, Mr. Hai Sagan, Pei Manitou Sagan, Dus Chin, Limikchif Nia, and Nipashkwan Pichi Lilang Mikchif. So hello everyone, my name is Joshua Morin. My family comes from the historic Métis communities of St. Albert and Lac St. Anne, and I use their traditional names, which we call Mr. Hai Sagan, meaning Big Lake for St. Albert, and then Manitou Sagan, meaning Spirit Lake or God's Lake for Lac St. Anne. My family is Métis, and for many of you that, if you're not aware, the Métis people are one of the recognized Indigenous nations under Section 35 of the Canadian Constitution. We are recognized back in 1982 as an Indigenous nation. I speak a little bit of what some might call the language Michif in that regard. So for many of you that aren't aware, my grandma, she was the first Indigenous woman that was appointed to the Canadian Senate. Her name was Thelma Shalafu. So really, she opened the center that I work in now called the Michif Cultural Center, generally to give people access to classes such as moccasin making. So of course, with the Métis community, moccasins, we have a very interesting history of moccasins, and of course, a long history of moccasins, much like with other Indigenous nations. For one, we Métis jig in moccasins, one of our forms of dances in that case. And it's really cool because it fits in with that aspect of dancing light and almost as if you're kind of like dancing as if you're floating on what you're dancing on in that case. And also too, we love to bead on moccasins, as many of you are, where, there's like, this is a book you can get, but it talks about Métis beadwork right here in that case. And then of course too, for moccasin styles, like you like to put these kind, like this is one you would see in the Fort Chip area. There is a Métis community up there, and of course First Nations that live up there too. But you can see they like that white background, and they even will use berries and local plants in their area. And even to the perspective of what they're beating on, it's as if they're looking down right on the flower and replicating how they would look at when they see it in that case. And they also like this border style where you can see the two beads and one white bead on it. And that can vary from those northern communities. Sometimes they'll use red in there instead of the blue, and sometimes they'll use green. Of course, it really just goes back to what colors are significant to that community it comes from, and the connection to it. And I mean, we wear lots of styles. This is actually another style. This would be kind of like what you consider like a Métis kind of moccasin. You have the toe tucking on it too. All the classes that we do at the Michif Cultural Center, they're all taught by a lady named Elder Joyce Beaver from Sandy Lake in Wabasca. And she was really good friends with my grandma. My grandma's now passed in that case, but she still comes and teaches moccasin making with our class. And she can do like that style, the slipper style. She can do wraparounds, which are kind of like what she calls the jogging moccasin in that case, perfect for springtime. And even when it's winter and the snow's like hard and crunchy, as Hannah was talking about, these are perfect for those kind of weather. And you can put another sole or a piece of material on the bottom too if you want to keep it a bit more safe. Even got like this kind of style that she likes to make. So she likes to, give people, style too in that regard. But with moccasins and us, it just goes back to that aspect of durability, functionality. I had to work in a place where it was becoming minus 30, but then of course it would become plus 30 in some cases too, when it was the summertime in that regard. And also really what Brooke was saying is that what I was always taught, that the moccasin is how is a one way we tread lightly on Mother Earth. We walk lightly on the land, because when we wear, shoes or boots or that kind of stuff, it can dig into her, and it's not at all what we want to do. And even in our language, Michif, how to say moccasin, we would say le soye mu, which means soft toe shoe in that regard. So I really like how even in our language, that aspect of walking softly, and how these moccasins are such a wonderful form of shoes in that case, because they honor our traditional way, but also give us a really great, as I say, functional and durable form of footwear. Because I find sometimes people will think, well, we just walked around barefoot all the time and that kind of stuff. And I'll even have people say, well, you should try to walk barefoot. And, I say, well, yes, that's nice, but my ancestors wore moccasins, and there's a reason why. And it goes back to kind of what Brooke was saying there before about these allow us to walk gently on Mother Earth, and honor that teaching that we have as Indigenous peoples in that case. So that's all I'll kind of share right now in that regard. And thank you so much, Marseille.
Welcome up. That was great. Thanks. James, what about you when you wear your moccasins? How does that make you feel? And maybe how does it transmit your identity to people you're meeting on the street?
Yeah, well, to me, like I have my moccasins that I wear. I have many different types of moccasins as well, but for me, moccasins really represent just my identity, like who I am, and not only from just an identity standpoint, but when I was first represented to my first pair of moccasins, they were actually a pair of dance moccasins. So they were for my grass dance, which was my very first dance I ever danced at a powwow. And they were a gift to me. They were given to me by one of my mentors, one of the people who really helped me along my way. And, when he gave me the moccasins, he told me, this is not just a tool for dancing, but this is a tool you can use for many aspects in your life. When you think about these, you can also think about the healing that comes with the moccasins. Think about the healing that comes with the dance that you're doing. Like what you're applying to your life and with your art form. So when I think about moccasins now, especially like how they've played such a big role in my life, not just as an artist, but just in gathering knowledge as well. I really think about the healing that comes with the arts and the art forms that it's attached to as well. So for me, obviously a lot of people might know that I do a lot of different dances, different dance styles, but even with the hoop dance, like these are my moccasins that I wear Oh, I'm not going to show you the left one because the left one needs a bit of work. But this is dancing mocs. Don't look as pretty as regular mocs. But yeah, you can see these ones here are the ones that I had made for me for my hoop dance regalia, and the colors, the designs, they're all specifically made from a story that I told the beadwork maker. And yeah, these colors and everything that goes on into these mocs are completely my style, part of my story, part of my colors. And you know, even with the dance that I do with the hoop dance, you know, the traditional hoop dance, it's a dance of healing. You know, it represents healing. It's I was told that it's a dance that was done traditionally in a healing ceremony, and you know, people who were from communities who were going through, you know, inner turmoil, you know, dealing with loss, dealing with inner pain, these hoop dancers would come, and they would have a, you know, like a gathering ceremonial style for these people, and the dancers would come and they would dance for the people. You know, they would dance for their healing, but also share their stories, share their teachings, share some of their traditions through the hoops. And you know, the people who were watching, they would actually get to become a part of that story. They would get to become, you know, a part of that journey within the hoop dancers. So you know, for me, when I wear my moccasins, I always think about those healing properties, you know. And even as a grass dancer, you know, when we dance, like what Josh was saying earlier, you know, one of the teachings that we have in our area is what we wear on our feet is to tread lightly, you know. And the even as grass dancers, you know, we're told when we used to go out and prepare land sites for our communities, we would pat down that grass in a very gentle way, you know, to try our best not to damage the grass or not to damage or hurt anything that might be living in that grass, you know. So even with that story of treading lightly kind of resides and reminds me of the teachings we have as grass dancers. You know, you use your feet as a tool to heal, but a tool to also build. You know, prepare those land sites that we have. So, yeah, and for me too, like I don't know, I just feel like when I wear my moccasins, I just feel empowered. You know, because growing up in the area that I grew up in, you know, I dealt with a lot of you know, racism, dealt with a lot of bullying due to being Indigenous. So yeah, like now when I wear my mocs, I wear them with pride, and something that I try to wear as much as I can, because I don't know, I love rocking my mocs every day of the week. Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's awesome. I like what you're saying about you know, there's, you know, your dancing moccasins, and then there's your kind of everyday moccasins. I'm the same way. I mean, I busted out my powwow moccasins, you know, this week, and to take pictures to put on our website at Concordia.
Nice.
But it really called my attention. Like, I don't make moccasins either. I'm a thinker. I'm a philosopher, an academic.
Mm-hmm.
That's my skill. And so the people that make the moccasins are incredibly gifted, talented. They've spent, you know, decades perfecting this skill. And so my hat's off to the makers, because without them, I couldn't rock these mocs, right?
Yeah.
One thing about me is that I don't like symmetry. And so, of course, I got my feet backwards here. If you notice from my moccasins, my instructions to the beaders were that they can look same colors, sort of similar, but I want them distinctly different. And I'm not sure if you can really see that, but one flower is actually outlined in white and the other is not. And the leaves are a bit different. And that's, you know, there's some berries on there that are always different too. Because for me, that brings some like an old teaching forward for me, in that, you know, there's lots of, we aim for this perfection in everything we do, and that's simply just not reality, right? We, you know, our Nana Bush stories teach us, you know, within us, there's the good and the bad, so to speak, right? That there's a balance, there's this positive and negative constantly going on, and that we choose to maneuver through that as best we can, and by being the best, you know, for me, the best Anishinaabe way I can be. And so I want that reflected in my outfits and in my, you know, my dance moccasins anyway, because they're so fancy and we can make them so colorful. But around the house, I wear the typical, I'm just going to lean over here for a sec. I wear these around the house. These are made by Brian Kimwan. He comes from Wikwemikong, Ontario. He lives in Toronto. I will be happy to post his info on our website after if you want to order these. I don't know if he gave me a deal. He only charged me $80 for these Canadian, and they're double insoled. It's moose. So, you know, when I step on a rock, you don't hear me swear. When I step on a rock, I'm swearing in these, right? Even though I've got my insole in there to try to cover that up. But a lot of the times too, I've got some other moccasins that are on the shelf waiting to be, because when from dancing, you always blow holes in the bottom, like you heard you heard James say. And so even getting the material to fix those is really difficult, especially, you know, for, you know, us urban folks or people who live far from their communities. So it's hard to get the stuff to keep fixing our moccasins all the time. So I've got some on waiting for moose hide. If anybody wants to send me some, hook a sister up. But let's go on to the next question. I wanted to ask Brooke, you know, I really liked the colors of your moccasins, and I feel like I really feel like the Haudenosaunee come through. Like, so could you tell us more about the style and the colors, and how that maybe why that brings forward, you know, immediately a recognition of the culture?
Yeah, sure. I think color-wise, I just am so drawn to turquoise. I guess it's a stone that always pops out to me. And like you said, with the symmetry, like I definitely love to not have the same thing going on. So like I chose different colors.
Oh.
I added like some random bubbly thing here, but really significant of Haudenosaunee work is the raised work. And I always wondered, like, why is it so raised and pronounced? And then as I was doing it, working on this, and to really raise it is like to create a sky dome. And that's so vivid on a lot of our work, is the sky dome and this circular image, which really represents so many teachings. And yeah, there's so many like swirls that just represent a lot of like growth, a lot of continuity. These ones are, I hope my mom's not watching. It's like her gift that's been in the making for like 3 years. I'm like, it's gonna be a Mother's Day gift. It's gonna be a birthday gift. It's a Christmas gift. But yeah, colors is probably one of the hardest part of this process. And I'm a Libra, so I'm very indecisive. I'll be like, ooh, this color, this color. And this is my first pair where I just let the beads fall wherever they fall. I didn't really have like a pattern. This one was a pattern. Merritt gave us all patterns to follow. But yeah, I would definitely say the raised beadwork is distinguishing element for Haudenosaunee beadwork. And
Hannah, would you say that there are distinctive colors that are typically used for the Inuit people?
Traditionally, most of the sealskin boots are made of all sealskin. So women would wear the bleached, de-haired white sealskins on their kanak, on the, let me get one out, on the tips over here, like on the, what is this called in English? The shin part. Is that what you could call it? Yeah. So they would traditionally wear that, and as well as our designs are going this way. Is this horizontal or? Sorry, I just got a baby and my brain isn't all here yet. So That's traditionally, this is the way that the direction that women's designs go, and men's would go more up and down. And my grandmother would make sealskin bottoms. I'm still learning how to make those, but now a lot of like beads are a little bit newer to us compared to here, my cousins down here who it's been here for generations and generations. For us, it's been about maybe 2-3 generations that we've had beads. My grandmother didn't make beaded things, you know, but it's more towards like my parents and our generation now that we're beading. We don't have any particular colors that we use, but yeah, that's my little nugget of information that I learned from my grandma.
That's
Yeah.
cool. And I really enjoyed hearing both you, Hannah, and Josh talk about how the environment is really related to the type of shoes, and even how you think about the shoes you're wearing. So, you know, Hannah, you said, you know, like the sound it makes on the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And it, as an anthropologist, a trained anthropologist, I recall reading that there were some groups in British Columbia, because of the weather, they actually did not have footwear, just because it was so damp that the footwear would just fall apart. It was much better for them to go around barefoot. So I think that is even, you know, pretty cool. And I have not been able to verify this anthropologist's work. I haven't met anybody from BC yet, but in my travels, that's one of the things I want to verify. Is that really true? Because certainly in my travels and listening to languages, I feel like even the Indigenous languages from particular areas really sound like the land that they come from.
Mm-hmm.
And then I recall learning about, you know, the Inuit have many words for snow, whereas down here in Southern Ontario, we don't have very many variations or descriptions of it.
Yeah.
So for sure, yeah, like, you know, we're products of our environment for sure.
Yeah. And these ones I made recently for my daughter. These ones are good for the middle of winter before the snow is too wet, you know, because these are leather bottoms. If I'm still learning how to make the ones with sealskin. Those are waterproof, and eventually I'll learn how to make them. It's fun. I'm looking forward to that. I'm always a believer of learning more and more. I don't want to ever know everything my whole life.
James, you want to tell us about your area of the world? I'm over in Ontario, so I'm sure things are quite different out west.
Yeah. Just are you talking about like the colors or?
Yeah, the colors and how that really comes, you know, the identity comes through in the style of shoe.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, like I was kind of taught that, you know, we're a lot of us are given our colors through, you know, ceremony, from passed down from family to elders. Like I know a lot of Cree people in this area who use a lot of different colors, and their moccasins, their regalia, their artwork in general. I don't want to just say that we use distinct colors, because everybody's different. Everybody has different teachings, and even like with a lot of our teachings, even in general here, you know, us being, you know, Nehiao, the people of four directions, you know, we exchange a lot of teachings, as well as we communicate with a lot of different tribes from all directions. So, you know, my personal colors that I use, my regalia lot is a color that was kind of passed on to me by one of my mentors, who's from the south. So like you'll see on my stuff, I use a lot of turquoise on mine as well. And not only is it just a beautiful color, but it's one of the watercolors I was kind of given by my mentor, who's a Tas Pablo from down south, and the teachings within it. But a lot of my earlier stuff that I had actually have a lot of the medicine wheel colors. So a lot of my earlier stuff that was passed on to me by one of my other mentors have kind of the, as you can see, this is my kind of everyday wearing moccasin, just kind of around the house. And this is not meant to be danced in, but I still dance in it. And you can see, yeah, the duct tape, you know what I mean? Good old, this is actually not meant to be danced in. This is kind of a house moccasin I usually just wear around the house for comfort. But of course I got to dance in it, and I popped a hole in it, so I had to jimmy up some tape on it. But yeah, a lot of the colors, like the earlier colors that I used on a lot of my stuff, was had some of the medicine wheel colors that you can kind of see on here, which is the red, white, yellow, and black. And in some places they use blue instead of black. So yeah, it just really honestly depends on your teachings. It depends on, you know, the colors your family use, the colors you receive in ceremony and stuff like that. Because like I said, you know, traditionally we used a lot of hide. You know, we used elk, we used deer, we used moose, and kind of like everybody else, you know, the beads and the designs kind of came a bit later, you know, a little more contemporary, right? So yeah, with that, I think I'll probably just leave it with that.
Cool. Awesome. What about for non-Indigenous people? What do you all say to people who want to buy them or wear moccasins? Josh, what do you say to non-Indigenous folks?
I didn't really get to answer the last question, to be honest.
Please
so
do.
I kind of want to be able to do that.
Sure.
In that case, just because I want to give people that opportunity here, the Métis connection and our nation's voice on how we feel about rocking our mocs. I think that's important, giving everyone that equal opportunity of voice. So I'm just going to use this opportunity to do that.
Sure.
In that case.
Sorry about that.
So kind of like touching with what James was talking about, it's absolutely influenced by, you know, your geographical region, which communities and nations you were interacting with and historically lived around in that case. So with St. Albert, it's pretty interesting because it was a very strong Métis community. You had around 865 Métis people living there around 1885, even during when the Riel resistance was happening. And they lived really close to a community called the Michel Band. And for any of you who aren't familiar with the Michel Band, they come from a line called the Caracontes. And the Caracontes came all the way from the Great Lakes area, often referred as Mohawk fur traders that traveled west within the fur trade alongside with Métis families in that case. So sometimes he would also speaks to that, like what was the community's relationship with the First Nations that they were living with, or with Indigenous communities that they were living around in that regard. So with the Métis of St. Albert, there was intermarriage with, for example, the Michel Band community, which a lot of them did have that Mohawk connection in that regard from traveling west within the fur trade. And of course, then too, we had connections with the Cree people that were living here. And if you go up north, you know, where Métis live in northern Alberta, they have connections with the Dene people. And then if you go to like North Dakota, Red River area, the Métis people have connections with the Ojibwe people and Anishinaabe, just to name a few. And the person who I've learned my language Michif from, he talks about how his family has connections with the Dakota people in that regard. So it just goes back to that aspect of whose our connections were, what geographical region we lived in, and also with what James was saying too, is that the colors can literally change from family to family and even to person in that regard, because it goes back to what your upbringing was and what the teachings were that you received in that case as a person. So like with Métis, you know, right, you would have seen colors that probably would have represented, you know, for one, the Métis flag in that case. You probably also would have seen colors that represented the Métis sash. And this is one of my great grandfather's Sever Villeneuve sash from 1885. And this one's really cool because there is a turquoise color thread in this sash. And that speaks to, once again, as I was talking about, that connection that the Métis here in this area had with the Mohawk people that came over to this area. Their colors that they would use, which turquoise is one of them, they brought over that influence. So you would have seen that implemented, of course, within our moccasins and other clothing, because we always like to match what we were wearing. In that case, Marseille, Hannah, it is a beautiful sash, and it's still durable. It's still durable and strong, which is always something I like to touch on, is what we make. It all has to be durable, and it has to work, and it has to be comfortable too in that case. But another cool thing too is with our moccasins, and I imagine this applies for many people, is even if the leather part starts to deteriorate, you can save the vamp, and you can move this vamp onto another piece. So you could put it onto another moccasin, you could put it onto a piece of like a pocket, put it onto your bag in that case. So we're also all about reusing with what we have, you know, passing it down and continuing to pass it down in that regard. Common styles, you would have seen the flower, right? This was very common. You would see with Métis people. We even had that name coined to us, the flower beadwork people. Lots of theories on where that came from. Some people say it could have been influenced very much from our First Nation grandmothers that we had, in particular with the Ojibwe people. This is the other one. And then of course the old one that I was showing you from Fort Chipewyan. And these ones too, they may, when you look far back, they may look kind of similar, but when you get close to them, they're not technically the same. And, you know, Daryl, maybe this way might be better because then they're foot to foot. But the cool thing with that is because we were always taught that all plants in nature don't grow perfectly the same together. They're not, they always will look unique in their own way. So everyone's beadwork is going to look unique in their own way and reflects how they bead themselves, because some people will bead a lot more tighter than other people that might bead a bit more loose. And that even will speak to which bead style you're using. Another thing too I'll touch on is that we always were shared about how the aspect of in wintertime, you wouldn't want to bend your needles or break your needles, especially in the old days, because when it was the middle of winter, it's not like you can just go to the store or to Michael's or to something like that and get a new needle. You had to really take care of these needles. So even that aspect of how when we made our moccasins, we had to be very gentle and durable, and just made sure the items we had, they were taken care of in that case. Non-Indigenous people, we offer moccasin classes for everyone. Our moccasin classes are open for everyone to come and take part. You don't need a Métis card, you don't need a status card or anything like that. Our open sign means it's open to everyone. There obviously is a fee that comes behind it because there's materials and all that kind of stuff, and the elder traveling from Sandy Lake in that case. But we're firm believers of that. If you want to learn about who we are and the clothing we make and what we wear, you sit down with an Indigenous person and do that in that case. And that's exactly what we offer. We don't want to have someone to get a botched version or a class where they come in and it's like it's all cut out already for them and they don't even get the chance to bead in that case. You know, we want to give them that full experience of how we actually make moccasins, because it makes them really appreciate, for one, the work that's put in that case. You know, a lot of times people will say, oh my God, like $400 for moccasins, I'm not going to buy that. And then they'll go to a Nike shoe store and spend the exact same amount on a factory made brand of shoe. So they really get to see how this is a custom made shoe that's literally made for your foot. Like, it's literally made for your foot. It's meant to literally mold around your feet. It is your shoe. That's what we tell people. This is your shoe that you're making for yourself, and you'll have this special connection to it because the beadwork that you're putting onto it is your design that you've picked yourself to as well in that case. And then of course too, you're getting all those stories with the elder that comes in, which a lot of people say that's the best part, is not even making the moccasin. That's the bonus, but all those stories that came behind it and that experience of just being able to sit around with you know, many times it's women that are coming, but we do get men too, of course, but just get to sit around, you know, the ladies and hear their stories and the laughing and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's very much what we really like to embody, and just that aspect that we're open to everyone to come and take part in that case. You know, when we're not teaching people to make traditional regalia or teaching them to make everyday today moccasins that you can wear, because in the Métis culture, that's what we used the moccasins for. It was for our everyday use. And you know, we would wear the same moccasins as we did for dancing as we would when we were in the kitchen, because we were dancing in the kitchen in that case. So yeah, so I'll end it with that, because that kind of covers the one question, and then answers the other question about non-Indigenous people in that case. So, or say hi.
Thank you, Miigwech. Hannah, do you have anything to add? Sorry,
I
James.
just have to, yeah, sorry. I just, I actually have to run. I have to head out actually and do something really important. But thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciated coming, and I'm honored to be here among some really amazing panelists. Thank you guys so much. It was really good to be here, but unfortunately, I do have to kind of run out of here.
It was nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming,
Yes.
James.
For sure. Thanks for having me. Thanks. And hey, what's going on, bro? What's going on, cuz? Ex Maga.
Hannah, yeah, what do you say to non-Indigenous folks who want to wear moccasins or buy them?
I encourage it. You're supporting an Indigenous person's business. You're, you know where your money is going, and it's going to be feeding them and their family. And me I'm an artist and a sewer as well. So I really appreciate when people buy my work. It doesn't matter if you're Inuk or Métis or Halunaka, non-Indigenous person. It's really appreciated. And to know that you're like, I always put good energy into my work. That was a teaching that was passed down to me, because whatever they buy, that energy will be put out, you know. So knowing that, like, it's good. Like I appreciate it, and I encourage it. Yeah, I always get a little bit cautious when talking about teaching non-Indigenous Indigenous people about making kamiks or kamitunak, like the or any of our traditional clothing, because some people do take that and they appropriate it and sell it, and then take away the customers that could have gone to Indigenous people. So that's always something that I'm always wary of, which is sad, because I do want more people to learn and be like, I'm a very open person. I would love to teach everyone, but it's always, I'm very picky about who I invite to the table, you know, which is sad.
Brooke, do you have any wise words for non-Indigenous folks? Maybe how to approach in a good way?
I guess I could just, like ripple off what both Joshua and Hannah said. It is encouraged and it's really appreciated when people take interest in artwork, because at the end of the day, we're all Indigenous from some place in this world. So it's really about that reciprocal relation that we establish, and it's all done in a good way and with all respect. But there's also, like the trust issues of, what are you going to do with this, or where is this going? And that's also valid, because it happens. It's everywhere. It's all over social media. Someone can just, take these teachings and then go start a beautiful fashion line on Vogue or whatever. But yeah, it's really, I would love it to see people rocking it, wearing it, and as long as it's done in a good way, and that relationship is built, and it's not just to take and take, but there's, some sort of reciprocity happening.
That brings up a pretty interesting sort of maybe academic kind of angle. So cultural appropriation, and in Canada here, we don't have any laws that actually protect our, culture, or even family emblems. Certainly British Columbia, those, the designs there, those belong to families and to clans, and they cannot be used by other people randomly. And certainly for the Anishinaabe, we have some of that as well. And I would assume that many Indigenous groups as well have that sort of the sacred family cultural property. And so that's, one of the things that I'm interested in pursuing in my research is looking into, cultural intellectual property rights. Do you guys have any kind of maybe information you want to share about that, especially as artists, right? Like, I know there's the World Intellectual Property Office, who offers a lot of advice on how countries and nations and can start thinking about policies and protection. But what would you guys recommend as a first step for Canada in terms of protecting culture? Josh, want to try?
I always go back to that aspect of just honoring, and I guess that's the best word, I'll just use that right now. But honoring our sovereignty as Indigenous peoples, our right to be able to tell our stories, say that this is our, for example, symbols, like in our nation, right? We have the Métis flag in that case, right? And if any of you aren't aware, there's been stuff that's going on in Eastern Canada with people that are using that symbol, the Métis flag, and also identifying as being Métis in that regard, when they're not actually recognized under Section 35 of the Canadian Constitution of being part of the Métis Nation in that case. And that just goes back to that whole thing of, the government trying to define who we are as Indigenous peoples, because it's created this whole misconception on who is Métis, how to be Métis. And that's just because only now, like in the recent time, we only now have we been able to have that power as a nation to choose who is part of our nation. And it's funny because that throws a lot of people off when you tell them that at first. They're like, well, can't you just be Métis like that? And when you learn more about sovereignty and all that kind of stuff, a nation, it's just that a nation determines who's part of their nation, and the community determines who's part of their community. And it's that the community claims you, not that you claim the community in that regard. And a lot of that, Canada has a tough time understanding just those simple aspects. I've sat in on 2 recent consultations, one on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples for the Métis National Council, and just having to remind these people that when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, you're dealing with their culture and their way of life as Indigenous people. So anything that you're going to do here, it's either going to have a positive impact or it's going to have a negative impact on us down the road in that regard, because you're literally dealing with our culture and our way of life when it comes to honoring our sovereignty as Indigenous peoples. And they even did one previously before that on Michif language in that case, and implementing the Indigenous Languages Act that has reached royal assent. And, once again, me telling these government officials that we're not looking to be an arm of Canada in any way or form. What we're looking for is for this government that has now been placed here in that case to recognize our continued existence as Indigenous peoples and our inherent rights that we should be able to practice without, ridicule or people taking our symbols, for example, or taking our traditional ways and botching them. In that case, with Hannah saying people like that actually happens. You'll teach someone something and they'll go and do their own workshop and they'll be making money off of it. And I've heard that from the elder that comes down and teaches our moccasin making. So same thing with us. We're we're conscious on who comes and takes our workshops at the same time in that sense. But just that aspect of, just honoring our sovereignty. One interesting thing is I heard in the United States, though, that tribes and those that are recognized there, they do have protections over their symbols, which is one thing that's very interesting. I know a gentleman down in Turtle Mountain, North Dakota, Cade Ferris, and that's one thing he says, yes, we're like, both the countries are colonial, United States and Canada, but there are certain laws that some cases they're more ahead, and in some cases we're more ahead on our side as Indigenous peoples. And one of the ones that they have is that protection over their symbols in that case. And another one I always like is that they have their own like tribal police when you go onto some of their communities in that case. And it gets to the point where if you're like an archaeologist in that case, they're standing there with you as you're doing this dig site. And once something comes up that's okay, the community now has to take control. It's like, yeah, you guys have to get out of here. This is now the community's initiative that we're doing in that case. So I always have lots of thoughts with that, but I just think it goes back to, honoring our sovereign right as Indigenous peoples, and that if you honor that, you won't be stealing from us, because once you steal from us, you're not honoring our rights as a sovereign nation in that case. I hope that made sense, but that's kind of how I feel with that in that case. So yeah, where stay.
Thanks. Brooke, I feel like it's been a while since we heard from you. Do you want to that Josh has talked about?
Well, when it comes to like symbology, I find it's really just mimicking images from creation and like creation story, and that's all a huge element of spirit. So it's like, how do we patent ideologies and image from spirit and creation, and like this divinity of, it's for everyone. It's like I don't know. I don't think we can patent.
Here's where I get concerned, is that big companies like Monsanto can patent corn when that was developed by the Haudenosaunee people. So when I think about those kinds of things, I start to think about like, how do we protect, our sovereignty? Like Josh was saying, when I think about food sovereignty, the right to speak our words and our thoughts that come to us from Creator, right? That we want to bounce those messages out there. And even too, like in the academy, or sorry, in post-secondary settings, I even feel like it's hard to have these conversations without hurting settler feelings. And so it causes us to kind of, we heavily monitor what we say in terms of not hurting somebody else's feelings, but at the same time, it prevents us from actually really talking about these hardcore issues that, that we face as First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people in this country. So I feel like, sir, there's the disconnect there, but somehow we have to figure out how to maneuver through that.
I think with like these wampum belts that are considered communal property should never be sold or given away. There's I'm not no professional about like museums or the repatriation acts, but I know there's new policies that have been placed for these items to be now given back to the Grand Council Chiefs of the Haudenosaunee. I think it's the National American
NAGPRA
Museum, something. Yeah, there's a lot of acronyms in my head right now. But these items should definitely be given back to us. I like that saying, nothing about us without us. These, like, we're good. We can have these items back in our hands, and some are sacred masks that are used in particular ceremonies and belong to societies. So my belief is just like, ceremony, language, doing all those acts that they can never take back from us. They tried to do it and we're still here. We're those seeds that our ancestors planted. And I guess with like that love and energy and momentum of honoring our ancestors and like moving that energy forward, I feel like we can't be stopped. And I don't know if someone's going to use that or government's going to hear. But yeah, just be that strong warrior woman and have that energy. And I feel like we shouldn't walk on eggshells when we're in academic settings, like I really believe in using our voices now for the future generations. It might disturb people, it might hurt some feelings, but if we're going to shake up a system, it's for those babies that are yet to come. And I don't have kids yet, but I have nieces and nephews, and I look at them and I'm like, I will do anything to make this place better. And I'm getting very like heated because I'm so passionate about it. I get so riled up. And it's the lighting. Okay, that's my spiel. Yeah.
I had something to say. I had so many comments I wanted to make while you were talking. When it comes to appropriation, we have a lot of symbols in Inuit culture that has been appropriated, like gamit, the Inuit symbol, ukpik, like all of these different brands that we like, it really takes away what we could have made money from. Like, we are already oppressed, and we are already there's so many people that are that have low income, food insecurity, housing issues up north and in the southern cities that Inuit migrate to, and it just takes away all of these opportunities that we could have had, and it goes into the pocket of someone who is already privileged. So that's something that I think about when I'm thinking of cultural appropriation, and it doesn't even go into their minds, I think, when they're processing that, because they're so privileged they never had to deal with that. So when I speak of issues, I try to make sure that they're aware of their own privilege, and they won't use their hurt feelings as a weapon, because they can, white sensitivity, when it comes to issues that we deal with on a daily basis. And yeah, I just wanted to agree with both of you when it comes to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to remind the audience, anybody out there who would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to answer any of those questions. And yeah, Josh, would you like to add anything at this time?
No, it's just that I agree totally, and just that aspect of, if like the reparation part, it's really interesting with that, because I worked with a lady recently who was working on one that was like for Métis specific artifacts reparation, because in our province of Alberta there was only one that's been made specifically for the Blackfoot Nation. So there wasn't even one for the Cree people or the Métis or the Dene or any other nation that lived in Alberta and among the Treaty 7, 6, and 8. There was only one nation that had one thing or one reparation thing that was for them. So it really just speaks to how much work still needs to be done on that part of it. And it kind of sucks how it kind of sounds like there's so much red tape in a sense behind it, just for us to get that accessibility for it. Because absolutely, if it's an artifact or anything that has that connection to a nation, person, or community, they have to have access to it 100% in one way or another, even if it's that the museum is able to take care of it. But anytime they come in or they want to use it, they have no issue with that in any shape, way, or form. And I think there also has to be lots of more efforts for museums to bring those things back to the communities. Okay, so if the community doesn't have a proper facility, partner with that community and build a proper facility that can house those artifacts in that case, because that also will then promote people to go visit those communities. In that case, you don't have to go to museums to learn about us. You don't have to go to libraries. You go to the actual communities in that case, and I think that's very, very adamant part, yeah, so that's what I could think I'll just end on in that case. But there is hopefully that one with Métis, it kind of just starts a ripple where there's just a big movement for that reparation in that case, even if it comes from all the way up from the level of the federal government in that regard, there has to be something with that for sure. One actually good example, one last thing, is we had old trap line maps here from the Mercredi family. And these are literally trap lines that the family still used in that case. And it came from this gentleman who was friends with my grandma, Joe Mercredi, and his family ended up coming down and visiting our center. And it was literally out of the blue, because we've had this box for years in that case, like just long time. And they came and then they just saw this box, they opened it, they were like, oh my God, these are my great grandfather's trapline maps. And I just looked at it and I was like, awesome. I was like, you guys can take that home for sure to your guys' home community, because for one, they still use it. They have that connection to it. And our center here in St. Albert, you know, we like, what will we gain from keeping those here? If only anything, we will only gain anything from giving it back to those communities, because that's our way of keeping that relationship and building that relationship with them too, in that case. So yeah, that's what I'll end on for that one.
That's really cool. So with my PhD work, I digitized wax cylinders, which contained sacred medicine, songs, and stories of the Anishinaabe. And they were made by a medicine man from a community called Chiefs Point. It's a reserve. And, you know, the early part of 1900s, the province retired, I'm not retired, but surrendered the land on behalf of the Saugeen Indians, surrendered the land for cottage purposes. And they did it to everybody in Ontario under the guise of creating economic, you know, some incoming financial base for these communities to grow from. And of course, they only charged $5 a year per lot, which didn't help the Indian communities at all. And so anyway, this particular community of Chiefs Point, today, it is still a reserve. It belongs to Saugeen, but no Native people live there. No Indigenous people are there. It's only reserved for non-Indigenous folks. And then there is a section of that small reserve that's saved as a hunting ground. And it's actually on that hunting ground is where this medicine man had lived. The elders, you know, through lots of, you know, when you work with elders, they kind of tell each other stuff, and then one person comes and tells you, and then you got to you'll go together and try to figure out all this information that people have given you. So we ended up finding the homestead, found this beat up old house with a tree fallen on it, smashed in, but you can still, you know, make out the land in their farm. So really cool about working with community and stories, and then going back and forth with archives. So I digitized these recordings. I brought the digital file home because the museum, I didn't want to have this big negative fight over something that to me was so precious and positive. So I wanted to surround my entire project with positive, good vibes. If these are medicine, then we got to treat them like that. And so I didn't want to get into this big fight about the physical object. The museum wants to own that, you know, are we going to fight about that? Well, I'm not interested in the physical object. I'm interested in the intellectual property that belongs to my people. So I pitched it to the museum that, like it or not, we are partners. They can own the physical object all they want. We own the information on it. So anything that happens with these cylinders happens as a partnership between Saugeen, although we represent the Anishinaabe Nation on this one. We will advocate and ensure that these are cared for properly. So what I did was I took the digital file out. And what I did was because these old stories were from, you know, the War of 1812, from, you know, the fur trade, from the very, very beginning of meeting explorers, these old stories. So they really belong to the whole nation. And so I couldn't really claim them and keep them on the reserve, which is only one little, it actually changed my identity, because I am very proud to be from Saugeen. It's then that I realized that I come from this giant nation, and, you know, we're spread across Canada and the United States, you know, east to, like, we're huge, the Anishinaabes. So I have a duty to ensure that those songs make it to all of those communities where we find ourselves today. And then in hopes of reconnecting through, you know, kinship genealogy. And so what I find is that when I tell this one particular story about the War of 1812 and about the death of Tecumseh, you can see my picture of Tecumseh back there. This story, when I tell it to people, other communities say, hey, I know that story. There'll be certain people that know it. And what I find is that when we do the genealogy, we all come from the same group of people that were at the War of 1812. So in fact, through the stories that families tell, we can actually trace our genealogy. It's a pretty cool thing to think about the oral tradition as having that kind of, you know, impact. We just need time to study, explore, reflect, and work with, you know, the oral tradition, work in oral history, so that we can grow how we think about and employ that type of knowledge for the future. Yeah, oh my God, I talk too much. Anywho, so getting things out of the museum Really important in bringing those home, but we can't just dump them on people either. I do a lot of research, and when I bring them home and I bring them to other communities, I talk about how that community is directly involved with these recordings, with these stories. So each community can recognize their own involvement in building Canada as a country. And so for me, that we have to understand as researchers, we need to support our communities, not just dump things on them. So that's a really important part of my work too. But as well, when I talk to, they give me more info in the archives, looking back to the communities. This is what I found. They then add on to it. So it's constantly this back and forth conversation. It grows and grows and grows, and it never stops. And in fact, community folks then pick that up and do their own things with it. So I brought the songs home. We have the canoe song. And so what the youth did in Saugeen was they built their own birch bark canoe, and they had to bring in materials because we don't grow the trees that big anymore. We don't have the knowledge in our community. So we had to bring in specialists to come in and teach us how to do that again. The kids, thank goodness the organizations partnered across the school boards. So the kids got high school credits for doing this project. And so when they actually took the canoe out to bless it, they played this canoe song for them. And then of course they still email me and say, quick, send me the file. And even though they're already in Saugeen, lots of people have them, they still come to me and ask me for those songs when they want to hear them, which is kind of cool. I love them, and I love helping people with the culture and reconnecting. I just see a question on here I want to bring up. There's a story for, a question. It says, how would someone go about returning an artifact? Returning an artifact currently held by a non-Indigenous family, or even find out where it came from? So Hannah's given a response there. Hannah, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of, we have a lot of carvings and different beadwork and sewing and weaving that a lot of people have sold over the years since the 1800s. And they've been starting to show up. Oh, like from other families who had bought it. Oh, my grandfather bought this when he went on his trip to Nunavut or something. And they'll post it online. There's different Facebook groups and also Twitter that have a lot of, like, because we're such a small group, like we're such a tight-knit group, a lot of Inuit like are kind of clustered together, and we can kind of figure out where it is using disc numbers and last names. Even just the date gives us an idea of where it could potentially have come from. So post it online, look at different cultural institutes, museums are very helpful, because yeah, there's a lot of places that you can definitely look into if you're trying to figure out where your art came from.
And you can always reach out to us at Concordia, any Indigenous professors, Indigenous directions. We would certainly find a way to help anyone locate the family where these items actually belong. And I think too that lots of things, and I encourage Indigenous folks too out there, start looking and following auctions, because a lot of the times that families, non-Indigenous families that have been holding these items, whether they're somebody's journals, it could be, like a recent case for me was Sir Francis Bondhead, who initiated, some treaty signing in the area. His actual journals, records, and some documents that had clan symbols, those were up in an auction. I couldn't come up with the money, nor could I convince anybody else to purchase them. However, the technological world, the digital world, it gives us so many awesome opportunities. So what I actually did was went in and I screenshotted all of the documents. So I actually have a copy of them. So I go ahead and sell them. So it's sort of, there aren't any laws for that yet. And so, we have to do what we have to do to make sure we conserve, protect, so that we can use and share this information in the future. I've always been looking for a War of 1812 medal for certain families in my community that, there's a lot of reasons why stuff gets taken out of communities. Sometimes with families, and in particular the medicine man I study, his wife and 2 children died of an infectious disease. His wife and son of yellow fever. His daughter died of Spanish flu. He had no one to pass this information on to. And so that's why I think he put it on the recordings, because he knew we'd come looking for it. He could see us coming, that we would need these connections to the past, to language. I'm really excited about Josh teaching Michif. I'm very excited about that. That is so super cool. And so we need these resources. I'm sure they could, the Michif language speakers could use more resources. And so I'd be happy to share these as well, these recordings over there, because what I found at Saugeen and with these recordings and doing the genealogy, the medicine man on my recordings, his father was Anishinaabe of probably was Métis, and his mother, we think she was Métis. And so there are words on there that my elders don't know, and they very well could be in a Métis language. And so I'd love to be able to share those and see, maybe they are. And I'd like to tell Brooke too, that I've actually shared these with some of my Oneida friends who tell me some of those songs sound like a Mohawk stick dance. So I'd love to have, everybody have a listen to these and see what we think. And I would also say that when I listen to Jeremy Dutcher's work with the Wolastic wax cylinders, the setup, I guess the structure of the songs are very similar to the ones that I have on my recording, and it's very similar time period as well. So I'm wondering how much of that universals exist across, North America, especially in terms of music and medicine and language and land. Yeah, does anybody want to, is there any more questions? Oh, there is too. Sorry about that. I'm trying to manage everything. No, I think we've got all the questions. Oh, hi, Thomas. So Thomas is wondering, Dolly, what made you so interested to get involved with education about the Native people? Thanks for your question, Thomas. Thomas comes from Saugeen First Nation. So I do know him. He's, a lot younger than me, but thanks for your question, Thomas. I used to work as an ed assistant. I worked with developmentally challenged children. I was not an educated person myself at that time, but I worked really, really hard to connect with these kids and try to do my best. And at the end of the day, I felt like these kids needed more. And I felt like I could give it to them, but I need to go and get trained myself. So I went to college. And I did so well at college. They laid such a great foundation that I had to keep going. So I went off to university. Thomas, you can do it too. Join us at Concordia. We're doing great things. This school's got a beautiful vision, and they're really pushing the envelope on, moving things forward for Indigenous people. So please, check out Concordia's website, email us at Indigenous Directions. We'll do what we can to help you succeed here. Thanks so much for that question, and welcome. I'm glad you came. Oh, Alan is asking everybody, what does rock your mocs mean to you? Hannah?
Rocking my mocs means to me showing my pride, showing my culture, being able to know how resilient we have been to be able to carry that knowledge and tradition past all of these violent colonial events that have happened to us and to our people. So rocking my mocs is a way for me to honor my my people, my ancestors, and very personally, it's a way for me to reconnect with my grandmother, who passed away when I was too young to start learning to sew. So being able to create gamituinak, for my family and for me is it touches my heart in such a deep sense. So that's what that means for me. Yeah.
My heart almost cried. Hannah sending that heartful message. Rock your mocks. It means to, yeah, pridefully rock and express who you are and show your identity and culture, all the teachings and knowledge that goes through learning to make moccasins. And it shows our strength and our ability to adapt and evolve and use this modern technology as like a platform. And these hashtags, it's like Indian country so small and Turtle Island, everyone knows each other and finds each other on via social media or some sort of platform. And it represents our unity, our diversity. It's so nice to see all the different colors, designs, patterns. It's just so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, so rocking your mocks, I mean, for me, I get a lot of things that come up with that because, it's about, reconnecting to who we are, as a or myself anyway, as a Michif person, and reconnecting to who we are as Indigenous peoples because, there was a time where I imagine when we were wearing moccasins, we were getting ridiculed for it. They were hearing racist comments. In some cases, they were like, "Oh, there's the Native people. We can go throw them in jail now. We see that they're there," kind of thing. And there was a law here actually to a point where if three First Nations people got together, they would be put in jail in the Indian Act. So a lot of times, people were not wanting to wear the clothing that represented who they were as a person because of all that they faced. So I think for me, I wear it because I want to defeat that stigma that still face today in that regard, but also to that aspect of it's that connection to what our ancestors and what our like Hannah said it perfectly. She's reconnecting to what her grandmother did in that regard. And I think that's for me, it's the exact same with the language, is that I'm learning what my ancestors did and how they lived on a day-to-day basis in that case, wearing moccasins, wearing a vest. That's how we would traditionally wear it and create it in that case, having my medicine pouch, speaking Michif, all of it connects to the exact same place of reconnecting to who we are as Indigenous person. And just for us, as Métis people, refinding ourselves, because a lot of us have been so displaced and so been pushed to the side. A lot of times, you'll hear people call us the forgotten people, or the road allowance people in that case, and even when we were recognized in 1982, the government did not want to talk about our issues or anything yet. They only wanted to recognize us and check mark it in that case. So it just all amalgamates to what our situation is today. And we're a loud nation now, and we're having people that are very much reconnecting to who we are, and they can proudly say Limik Chifnia, which means I am Métis in that case, or I am Michif. And just being proud to say that, you can proud to say that you're wearing moccasins. Even the weekends that we would always do our moccasin classes here, though, those are just such wonderful experiences, because the amount of times people didn't have that opportunity to just sit down with an elder or another Indigenous person, or just someone that they felt that they could be in a safe space to share stories with. In that case, that all goes back to the rocking your mocks and moccasin making in that case. So you know what, like for me, rocking your mocks, it's rocking who we are as Indigenous peoples in that case, which I kind of like in that regard. So absolutely just want to echo what Brooke and Hannah have said about this, and just that importance of reconnecting and honoring in that case, because we cannot forget who we are you know, who we are is who we will forever continue to be, because that is what has kept us going as Indigenous peoples, even when the times are really tough. You know, the times are tough right now, but we've survived through the toughest and toughest of times. And it's what kept us going was our culture and our way of life, and simple things like making moccasins. In that case, you know, many of us in our family, they might, or many of us in our nation, they might have not identified as Métis, but hell, their grandma was still making moccasins and all of that kind of stuff. So they were still living as makeshift people in that case, and just reigniting that in people, I think, is what this all leads to. You know, all of it. So that's kind of how I feel about the Rocking Your Mocs, and I rock them all the time. They're
That's
wonderful.
awesome. Thank you for that. That's great. Well, it's about time now, and I just want to say miigwech, niawe. Thank you so much to our panelists for being here today, for taking time to share the story of their mocs and how it empowers them. And I just want to say that I'm really impressed, you know, with the young people in Canada here, and our young Indigenous academics. I'm so proud of them, and I hope they keep working hard and moving forward. Thank you so much again for coming, and everybody have a great day and keep rocking those mocs. Bye.
Kwap Matin Mina, everyone.
Ana.
Ako
Wasn't
nangyay.
feel
Thank you, everyone who watched it. This was awesome and fun.
Awesome. Okay, I stopped the recording. Alan.